Hello everyone. Today we will be presenting a critique of Mr. Song's article. I am just Dima, or teacher with Yuki. I will be presenting the theoretical and conceptual framework of this article.
My friend will be the literature review.
And I'm going to present through the methodology.
And I will present the trustworthiness.
Okay, this study is about usage of visual novels in helping low-achieving EFL students to perform better and read more English. So, let me start with theoretical framework of the study. Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, so a theoretical framework is divided in three parts, and the first one is a problem statement. In the problem statement, it is said that story and visual art attract readers, and so could visual novels be applied in studying to engage and motivate those low-achieving EFL learners to read more English? Second part is research questions. The first one is how do learners in remedial courses in a junior high school in Taiwan interact with the reading tasks requiring them to play visual novels in the two cycles. Second one is what kind of reading difficulties, if any, do the learners encounter while playing the visual novels in each cycle. And how do they cope with the difficulties? And the final one is how does playing the visual novel motivate the learners to read in each cycle? And final part of theoretical framework is about two main topics of literature review. It is remedial English reading instructions and game-based language learning. The first one allows us to understand how language learners succeed in reading and what pedagogical implications from previous research are presented in the article. And the second one allows us to understand how digital games can contribute into language learning. Conceptual framework gave us several theories presented in the study. And the first one that basically, like from the abstract, that visual design and story of the visual novel attracts readers. Second one provided by Grape and Stoller, who argued that fluent reading comprehension is a set of processes rather than a single defined process. And finally, previous studies of the literature review suggest visual novels can be beneficial to language learners. Okay, now literature review.
And let's do the quick review on this. Main theories mainly talk about the development of strategies and the enjoyment of the gameplay, which can enhance the motivation and also reading comprehension. And in previous studies, those researchers use theater, simplified reading, kaku, or visual novel to examine the effectiveness of those low achievers. And only the last two are related to the tools you want to use. And the digital game can enhance motivation, vocabulary knowledge, reading speed, comprehension, and also the atmosphere in the class in the gameplay. Not significantly influence the language proficiency level and also the anxiety, to lower the anxiety of those low achievers. So there are some good points and bad points. And here comes the good points, is that it synthesizes and connect all the cited word in a clear way with some simple words. And we can see some link between the what has been done and what is going to be done. And we kind of say that it's really easy to identify the problem, the gap, and the design of the research. And we try to identify something in the discussion part, chapter 5, and you can see the researcher try to echo with the studies with what they found, what she found. But I have to say, from this part, you can see it's almost every function of the literature are balanced to inform the study. And I will say it's not bad. It's temporarily not bad because I haven't told you the bad points here. So something to be improved is that it's really too small in size because we only see it includes about 6 pages, only 6 pages in the literature review. And I have read through many theses in our library, and I realized that it's common to see literature review including about 30 pages, at least 20. And the issue include maybe 60 papers or even 100 papers. So common in most of the thesis if we are MS students. So, and I would say it's not that sufficient to inform the study. And we can see the research only use 7 recent studies. 7 recent studies are used out of the 24 studies. So 6 pages, 24 studies. Is that really a standard quality or quantity of synthesis of the research? So I would say it's kind of weird. Is that really a thesis or just a final paper, final report? Why is the MA students only include such kind of things? And also we can see the lack of some basic framework. For example, it should be including like reading strategies, reading, teaching, or anything related to a topic to inform the whole theories or ideas. It's so common in our MA thesis. And I will say, I really doubt, as a student from Zhengda, I really doubt why this MA student can graduate from Zhengda under the Professor Huang Yiping. And I really hope Huang Yiping professor can be my advisor. It's so nice. What an angel. Why the thesis can be right inside the 60 standard. Only 60 in the whole page, whole paper. But the problem is that the theory is too limited. Next one.
And now I'm going to talk about the methodology. For the research assigned, the participants were the 3 students from the English remedial courses, and there are 8 graders. And there are 3 stages in this study. The first stage is the planning stage with the need analysis from the students, and the following 2 stages are the first cycle and the second cycle. And for the first cycle, it's focused on the reading strategies and playing with the visual novels. And for the second cycle, it only focused on reading visual novels. And for data collection, the researchers used 4 methods, which are the audio and video recording and the observation field notes from the teachers and the written reflection from the students. And lastly is the interviews. And for the interviews, there are 2 types of interview that the researchers included. The first one is the stimulated recall group interview, and the second one is the semi-structured individual interview. For the stimulated recall group interview, the interviewees were the 3 students, which for the two interviews, they had the same interviewees. And the researcher used this interview within a day after they finished the reading task of the visual novels. And the purpose focused on the thoughts on reading tasks on visual novel and the reading difficulties from the presented by the students, and how did the students went through the difficulties. And these are the interview questions for stimulated recall group interviews. And for the second one, the semi-structured individual interview, the interviewees were the same. And the researcher did the interview at the end of each stage, and the focus were the experience of the reading task and the motivation of to English reading with visual novels. And here are the interview questions related to experience and motivation. And as for the data analysis, the video recordings were noted first, while the audio recording and the interview was transcribed. And after that, the transcription were noted for the topic related to the research questions to make sure that the initial themes were identified. And after that, the codes and themes were categorized and also re-examined. And then at the end, they come up with the analysis. And as for the written part, which are the observation field notes from the teachers and the learners' reflection from the students, these two were noted first also, so that they can come up with the themes identified, and in order to summarize, the themes were organized so that the learning experience could be clarified. And for the weaknesses of the methodology, we think that we can't justify how the researcher conduct the interview questions because the researchers lacks theories or frameworks related to the interview question. And the second one is lacking the explanation of the method of data collection and analysis, which we can't know why the researcher choose such ways to collect the data or analyze the data.
Okay, so for the trustworthiness and the competent practice that you can see in this study, the first is credibility. This study used multiple data sources and methods to collect and analyze data, and triangulation strategy was adopted to ensure the trustworthiness of the data analysis. And the second is rigor. The data sets were translated to confirm the interpretations of the data. For example, the video recordings ensure the observation fields notes, the interpretations of the notes were confirmed by the interviews. And third is usefulness. And this study provides insights into the effectiveness of using visual novels as a tool for remedial English reading instruction for low-achieving EFL learners. And this study incorporates game-based language learning into English instruction can be an effective way to engage students and improve their reading comprehension skills. And for the ethical practice, the first assurance. This study provided assurances to the participants that their identities would be kept confidential. And for the honor and protection, it protected the participants' rights and also minimized any potential harm or discomfort by creating a supportive and engaging learning environment. And for the third part, cultural difference, providing the guiding questions in both English and Chinese and explaining the meaning of each question in Chinese to ensure that the learners fully understand the questions. And this is the aspects of trustworthiness we think this study didn't practice. And the first is, this study didn't provide a detailed description of the participants' characteristic, and which could affect the transferability of the findings to other contexts. And also it didn't consider the cultural appropriateness of the visual novel chosen for intervention, such as its title, germ, content, language level, and gameplay features. For the next part is objection.
So for the suggestion, we found that there are three common weaknesses. The first one is lack of framework to justify the research design. And the second one is a limited amount of cited words, just as what Fred mentioned. It's like 2 limited, and the third one is the limited intervention time and the participants. There are only 3 participants in this study, which is lacking. Okay, that's the end of our presentation. Thank you.
Okay, so now you're gonna have 3 minutes, okay, for a discussion to raise a question, okay, for group 1. So group 3 and 4, please get started. Okay, I think it's pretty much the time. So, group three. So, please raise your question for group 1. This format is pretty much like when you are going to give your presentation in the graduate student symposium. It's just that right now you are the judges, right? Academic or international judges. You play the role right now, and then you are giving a question to the presenter. All right? Okay. So please raise your question.
On behalf of my group, I will give you a small questions. Like we are now about in your presentation, you have mentioned one key point that this in the literature review, it have a clear key in the previous review. So, what criteria do you choose? Is it clear? Yeah, because most of the, because you haven't mentioned about the previous step of this studies, you just ask about. Have you found again previous?
So you want them to further explain, okay, where and how they found the research gap. Okay, good. All right. So,
The reason why I say this quite clear is that based on my academic writing knowledge, it uses some basic framework or structure to write a paper, write the paragraphs. We can see the cited words are not just summarized in these paragraphs. We can see the linking, all the paragraph linking between each other. And the gap, I think, if I didn't get a mistake, but that might be how the teachers can use visual novels to enhance reading ability. And for some of the research, they didn't focus too much on this tool, and the researcher is going to use this tool. And also, the motivation and reading comprehension is what we can get from other studies. For example, from Kahoot, we can see the motivation get higher, but in visual tools, in visual novels, we didn't get the information. So I think from the 7 empirical studies, the researchers just mix all the findings from every piece of work and try to do another research to get some critical insight about visual novels. So I'm not quite sure, but I guess from my empirical studies, we gain some effectiveness from some digital games, but it didn't mean that visual novels can help students to get all the effectiveness.
okay, and that's why how our research gap was identified. Okay, we will come back to that. Okay. All right, so go for it.
I think we have several humble questions for you. The first one is based on the frameworks that is presented by Dima. I'm curious about why did you talk about research questions in theoretical frameworks, and you talked about the existing theories in conceptual frameworks. Based on my knowledge of these two frameworks, this is actually upside down, which is the opposite way. You probably need to talk about the existing theories in the theoretical framework and the research question within conceptual framework.
Well, that's because I actually have difficulties with understanding both concepts, both theoretical and conceptual framework. They're just wording difficulties, so I think I just missed it.
So Dima, did you ask your co-mentors when you encountered difficulty?
We didn't get too much insight from this study, so we cannot identify too much information to help us understand.
All right, so if Dima could also address this as one of the weaknesses, all right, in his presentation, that would be great. All right? And then one more humble question.
Yeah, which is about the characteristics of the participants. We are curious about because we only from the presentation we only know that it is about low achieving students, and you mentioned about some of the weaknesses, including not telling more about the characteristics of the students. We wonder if it's necessary for us to know more or deeper about the participants. Is it crucial for the researchers to know deeper about each of the participants, or is it reasonable for the researchers to only focus on the low achieving or some of the different characteristics?
this research is, as you can see, is something related to a remedial English course. So it's obvious that the participants will be like lacking English competence or something. So the researcher just go into a English remedial course, and then there were 5, but 3 of them were volunteers. So that's why the researcher chose those 3, take those 3 as their participants.
Yeah, but I think Sammy's question is that because you talk about the researcher should have, right, included more descriptions of the participants. So what are some of the descriptions that you wish to see but was not included?
It's most like a case study, and even especially the quantity of the participants are so limited. It's better to get the whole idea of all the participants, to understand their motivation and background information, to help this study more reasonable. Why the visual novels can help their understanding, or why not? So if there is any possibility or any factors, we should know as a reader.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the response. We will come back because I know that group 2 is going to present. All right. So we'll come back here. Thank you very much for the presentation. Okay. It's always challenging to be the starter. Okay. All right. Okay. So group 2, turn. And in group 1, I think you could also pay attention to their presentation, because then you will see, okay, in what ways that your presentation or your viewpoint is different or same, okay?
Whatever. We are group
2.
Yes.
Hello, we're group 2, and I'm Tim, and I'm in charge of talking about the theoretical and conceptual framework.
I'm Terry. I'm going to talk about literature review.
Okay.
And I'm Nancy. I'm going to talk about methodology.
And on the other side, I'm going to talk about the trustworthiness of this study.
Okay, so before we start, I think I need to give a brief overview about what the study is doing. So as you can see, the topic is using visual novels in reading instruction for low-achieving learners. So I think I have to explain what visual novel is first. So basically, visual novel is a kind of game in which it tells a story or a novel. And the way to play the game is that you interact with the characters in the game and to proceed the story into the ending. So the researcher has found out that game-based learning and visual novel can actually, because of the using English in interacting with the characters in the game, can actually be beneficial for learners to learn English. So the researcher wanted to use this in her research. Okay. And okay. So I'm going to talk about the framework of the study. So as you can see about this framework, like I just said, the researcher found out that by using games or visual novel to using game-based learning for low-achieving learner can make them become more motivated and have higher receptiveness, that is, make them more willing to learn, and have better performances in tests and have better expressions, especially when the characters in the game has many facial expressions. And here are some findings from other research that support the framework. I only list a few because later Terry is going to talk about more about the review, the literature review. So the first one is that game-based language learning is beneficial for low-achieving learners because games may motivate these learners and create atmosphere that enhances learner receptiveness. So they are more willing to learn from games. And the next one is researchers have found out that compared to the students that study from books, the students that learn from visual novels actually had a higher achievement in English expressions. So they are better at expressing themselves. And studies also show that computer-assisted language learning can assist low-achieving learners to cope with their learning difficulties. That is, by learning with computers, they can better develop their strategies to cope with their difficulties. Okay, so after doing the literature review, the researcher found out that previous studies suggest that visual novels can be beneficial for language learners, but most researchers, they develop their own visual novel to help their students to learn, but the prior research has not used the commercial off-the-shelf visual novels for language learning purposes. So this study aims to adopt visual novels as a reading instruction. So here are the research questions. So the first one is, the researcher wanted to find out how do the learners interact with the reading text requiring them to play the visual novels. And the second one is, how do the learners deal with the difficulties when they play the visual novel. She wanted to find out, does visual novels really help the learners to develop their own strategies and to deal with the difficulties. And the final one is, do playing the visual novel really motivate the learners to read? Okay, so now for Terry to talk about it.
Is there?
No. You can stand here. Okay.
So let's move on to literature review. Before I move on, I would like to ask you a question. Like, do you think, like, in the literature review, it should be theory packed? Should it be theory packed? Sammy, how do you think?
Can you explain more?
Like,
about what it is?
do you think that we should list a lot of theories in it?
I think it's kind of
Necessary. Okay, so here's one of the big problems in this literature review. Okay, not very theory packed. Okay, so in this in the literature review, the researcher talks about two topics, which are remedial English instruction, that means remedial English teaching, and the second one is game-based language learning. And I also want to talk about that Baker and Brown said that to develop reading strategy, the key is to increase students' reading comprehension and the total English, like reading knowledge. Next page. So the author first discussed remedial instruction, okay? And it really focuses on reading theaters. So reading theaters can help students to improve these three things. So first of all, they can increase students' motivation, and once they have motivation, they can have positive attitudes and encouragement, and then it would foster the reciprocal English learning environment between the students and each other, or the students and the teachers. So here's a game-based learning. So the researcher draws some definition, okay, and it said game-based learning basically is any kind of way that wants to combine education with video games. And it's all about fun engagement. Like, how do you let students have fun in learning English with the assistance of games? Okay, so it's like a combination, it's like an integration between serious learning, right? Like, oh, this is important and we have to learn it. And the interactive entertainment. That means like playing with Kahoot or like playing with games using digital devices. And they kind of merge them into a highly exciting medium that is called digital games. That is what game-based learning means. Like the author draws two definitions. Next page. And the author then comes up with another term called game-enhanced language learning. So it's like a language learning that takes place in commercial off-the-shelf games. I don't know why the author keeps insisting on the concept of commercial off-the-shelf. Okay? And the focus of it is on two things. It should be, the language learning should be in the wild, and how commercial games can be changed to foster, to increase our educational purposes. Okay, so I didn't state it clearly, but the common elements between game-enhanced language learning and digital game-based learning is that both of them should have enjoyment. Both of them should make students enjoy the whole language learning process. Okay, so here are some examples of game-based learning practice. So these two groups of researchers first used Kahoot and found out that the group with Kahoot can have higher motivation. And another group of researchers said that the people who play video games more often can have better grades. Next page. Okay, so we talk about digital learning, we talk about game-based learning, we talk about, I'm sorry, I forgot. And now we move on to visual novels. Okay. So this researcher contends that visual novel game can help create these positive sides about English learning. Okay. And the previous study haven't. So the author is right now identifying the gaps. Okay. So the author says that we haven't used like off-the-shelf novels for language learning purposes. I think it's kind of random. So yeah. And according to Tim, he just said that, yeah, the study aims to, this. Next page. Okay, here's my critique. I would say I have the same opinion as Frank, okay, but I have some other comes to, why is the format like this? I have some other things to talk about, okay? So pros is that it gives a lot of examples and support. And it covered all the related items in the study, like visual learning, game-based learning, and something else. But it has some serious cons. Okay. First one, the paragraphs are just too long. Like you can see, the whole pages is devoted to one paragraph. Like this is something that I wouldn't accept, and this is something that I mean, we should never do. Like we don't write that in a whole paragraph. Second one, it doesn't define remedial English instruction. If you look closely, the author defines game-based learning, game-based engagement learning, and something else, but it doesn't give any definition on remedial English teaching instruction. Third one, it doesn't give reasons why the study chooses to focus on commercial off-the-shelf visual novels. Like, is that so important? Why can't like normal visual novels be discussed or be researched on, right? So fourth, it should cover some previous research on commercial off-the-shelf novels, like anything about it, like how does it make like people happy or something. So I mean, there are some serious cons about this research. This is like the final one.
Okay, and I'm going to talk about the methodology part. So I'll start with participants. Who are the participants? The participants were 8th grade junior high students of English remedial courses in a junior high in the city of northern Taiwan. So the researcher didn't really explain why these participants were selected, but she did mention under what kind of circumstances can specific students sign up for after-school remedial courses. And these students had a percentile rank lower than 35 in one of the 3 main subjects, Chinese, English, or math, and further failed the test. And I consider this study using opportunistic sampling technique because the research didn't select a wide range or typical or negative cases. And also, she didn't mention which school, what characteristic of that school is. And so I consider it opportunistic. And the 5 students just happened to be in the remedial class, and 3 of them voluntarily participated in this study. And next, the interview question. So I'll list the 4 questions here. What were your thoughts of playing the visual novel? So from this question, the researcher could get to know the student's attitude towards visual novel. And number 2, what were the difficulties that made you stuck here? So what difficulty do they face while reading? And by asking this question, the researcher can identify the major difficulty whilst the learners are reading. And for question number 3 and 4, the researcher was able to know if they used any reading strategy to cope with their difficulty. And back to the below questions, the researcher did not mention that the questions were developed based on certain theories. However, she conducted a semi-structured interview to access learners' deeper thoughts of interaction with the visual novel, their feelings of gameplay, and also their feedback to the intervention. And next is the data collection. So the data were collected by several ways here: audio and video recording. This aimed to record the learner's interaction and was also used in stimulated recall interviews to explore their concurrent thoughts during the gameplay. And the second way is observation field notes. The notes were made by the teacher after each class to record what happened in class, and also weekly notes show differences between students' interaction in each cycle. And the third one is students' written reflection. There were actually some guiding questions for the learners to write down their reflection and to provide their insights. And they were encouraged to write in English as much as possible. The fourth way is interview, and there were 2 different kinds of interview. The first one is stimulated recall group, and the learners were interviewed in a group setting, which meant to make them relax and to engage more, and also to minimize the effect of power relationship between the teacher and the students. And the second interview is the semi-structured interview, which took place at the end of each cycle to explore their overall experience on the intervention. And next is data analysis. So the recordings were transcribed and noted, of course, and the transcription was coded for key topics related to research questions, and so that the initial themes were identified. The codes and themes were further categorized into a few groups to examine whether they are identified properly or not. And finally, the major categories were developed. So here are the interview question, data collection, and data analysis. And do they address the research questions? So the 3 questions briefly here. The first question was, how do the learners interact? And for this answer, I think she has found out that they're actually holding a positive attitude toward visual novel. And the difficulties they encounter were the unknown vocabulary. But for the third question, how does visual novel motivate them in each cycle? I don't think she emphasized this in the article.
The next part will be a critique of trustworthiness of study. Okay, so we know that competent practice consists of 3 main aspects, and here I will try to explain the first aspect, credibility. So the credibility meets criteria of first prolonged engagement. The researcher stayed all the time while conducting his research, acted as the participants' part-time remedial teacher. As for the triangulation, the researcher has also stated the satisfying triangulation, and I also have gone through his statement. However, we scored 33 out of 100 because this visit doesn't meet several criteria. The last 4 criteria doesn't meet the aspect of credibility. So the participants' validation, personal perspective, and a stage of humility are nowhere to be found. And we only found the researcher interpreted his findings. As for the community practice, this needs to be confirmed. Next, the second aspect is rigor. So first, the conceptual framework. As Tim X explains, the researcher presented several quite strong conceptual framework as the guide. And also, he also stated the research approach, clearly stated research approach, even though he did not clearly state research method, whether he used qualitative or quantitative method. And for the evidence, there are enough, more than enough evidences. The same also goes to the assumption and logic. All the claims, statements, and also the assumptions meet the criteria of how the research work. And for the data analysis is well analyzed, well written, and also interpreted. And for the document of the process is well documented based on the research design, and conclusions are also well explained. As for the alternatives are derived from the research limitations and suggestions. As for the usefulness is the research context is the research context lies in the junior high school in Taiwan, and also may be beneficial for other remedial students and remedial teachers. The process also well conducted, and the outcomes portrayed very well. It's constraints of the participants and how the visual novels implies on them. And for the research gap implies the sake of research because of its rarity and just of getting published. And the ethical practice, the assurances and honor and practitioner also explained in the question from given from the researcher to the participants. As for the cultural differences are not properly considered because both researcher and participants are Taiwanese and living in the same area. And the purpose of this study is it would be able for the researcher to fulfill the lacking criteria of credibility, and also what Jerry said, to more fix more in the part of the literature review. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So once again, let's have group 3 and 4. You have 3 minutes to discuss what questions you have for group 2.
That's right. There is a
So weaknesses
I like the idea of making break for the credibility.
Oh, that's great.
I think so.
Yeah, out of 100 on
Excel side. How come only the credibility part only get 30? The other two get 100. Very cute.
It's like separate to several items. They only got
Like,
1/3.
yeah, 1/3. Yeah.
It should be 2.
So unclear rules. It means what?
Like, he just describes each cycle, the students how it doesn't actually very typical how exactly it influences the higher the students feel, but it's
So that's one. And then you go to how you So you were saying is
English research with something better with different interviews. Sounds then personal
And if you talk about pretext, I said, somehow, even personal, but you have to provide the evidence. Why do you think? Your turn this time.
What do you call them? I don't know how to ask questions.
Okay. All right. So this time let's get started from group 4. So question. One question for group 2.
I wonder.
We wonder.
We wonder what is the commercial accomplishment, because you say it appears a lot of time, but they didn't mention it even once. So I was curious about where does it belong in the mythology or literature? I don't know.
You mean commercial off-the-shelf novel? Like, to me, it sounds so random.
So it's like it appears in certain place, but it didn't go through all the articles.
Where did you see this term?
In literature review.
Only literature review.
And like the later part, when the students actually use it in their teaching. Yes.
Okay, so she used the term to describe the materials
Yes.
that she used for her study.
Yes.
Okay. Which was the term that was not raised in group 1. But it seems quite important, right? Because it has been highly emphasized several times, right?
But in the literature review, I don't see its importance because it doesn't mention like above, so it only mentions in the past.
Because she mentioned like before, like most researchers, they actually made their own visual novel for the students to learn English like reading from. But so in this research, the researcher actually used the novels that are already in the market, like off the shelf, to use in her research. So I think that's a difference from the previous research.
Yes. That's what she would like to emphasize. It's not teacher-made. It's commercial material. Okay, designed by other design people, digital group of people.
Then there's one more problem about the literature review.
Okay, and she didn't. Then you might want to suggest, if that's the key point, and she has to review, or even I think talk about some of the research done by using commercialized materials. Okay, very good question. Okay, now group 3.
Yes, we found some limitation that first there is a limitation in time of using a visual novel. So the visual novel is limited for only 100 minutes. So the researcher suggests that for the researcher to use another visual novel again. And also this novel stated that they maybe the visual novel would be much better using the internal language, because even though the language is easy, the vocabulary are so many that unknown words for the students. Therefore, it would be better to use visual novels that have familiar words for the students. As for our preference, we suggest that the research can, for example, gain more personal perspective in this research, not only interpreted the data, and also research could like within the participants' validation, and also the students could get a sense of humility. Yes, so like asking for developers to validate his data. That is one of our suggestions for research, and also what Kelly said earlier. Is that good? Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, all right. So thank you very much. Hey, thank you. So I'm gonna, right, first of all, before we move on to group 3 and 4, I'd like to spend some time and talk about, okay, I have all the notes here. Okay, so so first of all, right, congratulations. It's really not easy to read a research article, first of all, and it's even more challenging to critique. Because when you want to critique, you have to have a higher level, so that you will be able to say, this is good and this is not so good. And let me tell you, I have been, I could say like probably struggling, or I have been working very hard recently to review a journal article. Okay, I think I spent more than, I would say at least 10 hours. 10 hours. And you see like journal article is much more condensed, right, than thesis. But even with that, perhaps 20 pages, it took me 10 hours. Because the researchers are up this level, and then if I need to provide anything helpful or constructive, I really have to pay close attention and to really see what else that I can offer. So it's a tough job, and particularly the first semester, the first task, okay? So definitely not easy. And so now, let me give you some comments, okay? So first one, I would like to give a little bit background of this kind of research for Zhengda. I know that you want to be, I'll let Professor Wang Yiping know. That in fact, they have 2 programs. One is like you guys, it's like full-time program. These 2, it happened to be that you have chosen these 2. So I was like, huh, why? You happen to choose 2 theses done by EMBA students. That means that they were like part-time students and they only worked during the summertime. Right? They are in-service teachers working in elementary, secondary schools, and they want to have an actual master's degree, so they worked only in the summertime. So each time when I was asked to serve in the committee, they always reminded me, they are not our full-time master's students, they are our in-service program. So they didn't have that much time, so definitely the requirement is a bit different, as you can see. So first of all, the length is different, okay? But even, see, I wouldn't use the length of a thesis to decide, to kind of correlate the quality of a study. Because we do have a graduate students who only, listen, whose master thesis only about 35 pages, double spaced. Yeah, if I'm not, yes. However, listen, but this study was published in a first-tier journal. How would that be? Because her advisor has already put the standard here, and even it's only 30 pages. Starting from the very beginning, literature review got to be very, very solid. Each of the references is up to the recent most top tier studies. It's not like, oh, journal article, conference is regular one. Each one of them is here. Okay. And what else? The research gap. It's a real gap that is really worth research. It's not like, oh, this hasn't been done. So what? There's so much that needs to be done, but why this one? So each single step is so well thought out. So that's why even it's only 35 pages, and I know what they were doing. This 35 pages is exactly this what was required by that top tier journal. You see what I mean? So right after the oral defense, she submitted her thesis to that top tier journal and it got published. They didn't want to, like, we usually, like for example, when we have a thesis, like 100 or 150 pages, right? And after the oral defense, we have to work so hard to transform that thesis into a journal article, right? 150 to like 20 pages also, all right? And that's a huge task. For example, right now, I have been working with 4 graduate students who already graduated and working either in college or graduate school or in the workplace. They have hectic schedule and they really want to come back and revise their thesis and to get it published. It has been so challenging for them, you know, to like graduate it and still working on that. So the strategy that graduate student adopted is to use the format of a journal article. Okay, I started from the very beginning. So that's another strategy. So let's come back. So what I'm trying to say is the number of the pages is not the key. The key is the quality and the logic. Okay, and most importantly, I think the credibility of the research. The credibility of the research. Why should we trust you? Is this something worth doing? And did you really give a solid rationale why this should be conducted? And this is the way of how it should be conducted. Okay, these are the important questions. And so, let's see. You know, like when I read a thesis, it's so important to come back and always start it from table of contents, because you will see how the study is structured. And you know what is the first thing that I get to see? Imagine. I always love to see what?
Methodology.
Yes, but I know it takes a bit time, right? Methodology, a long chapter. What else? Yes, methodology definitely, but what else? Abstract, yes, that's the first thing. Yes, I'll read abstract and then go through this. But there's also one section that I'll definitely read into. Introduction? Conclusion? Not yet. Huh? Research question? Literature review? Not yet. Not yet. It should go that it's important, but not yet. That's one part that whenever I look at the abstract keywords and okay, but then I quickly jump to that part. References, yeah. What else? No, hi, interesting. Not yet, not yet. Keywords? That's the first page. Yes, I did say that. But what else? Besides keywords, I look at the abstract, the keywords, and quickly, Trustworthiness? Not yet.
Research design.
Research, not yet. Research, no.
Result.
Result,
Limitation.
Yeah, Chloe, right? Limitations. I feel so bad that, you know, like yesterday, even when I went to the supermarket, and somehow I looked at something and I started thinking about Chloe, and I said, oh, I feel so bad I forgot her name. Chloe. All right. Yes, limitations. Why? Yeah, why? Why I started reading limitations? I can improve. What else?
If there's too much limitation, you don't have to waste time reading.
And I put that away. I think limitation is really, really important. Why? Yes, each part of it is important, but limitation is because let me say this: no research is perfect, right? So the researcher has to be aware the limitations of his or her study. So when you, for example, it's always for us to say all the weaknesses. So if you look at the limitations, perhaps what you have seen as weaknesses have been raised, addressed by the author already. You see what I mean? So that means that the weakness is already identified beforehand by the researcher. So it shouldn't be considered. It shouldn't be considered a weakness because I have already told you this is a weakness. Okay. But I do have to say that, for example, one of the weaknesses. So when I look at the weaknesses, I almost feel like that's the end of the. If I were the reviewer, I wouldn't even consider, okay, accepting or even sending it out for external review. Why? Because of one of the limitations is that she said that, oh, because of the words, there are too many unknown words. Too many unknown words. Because she chose the material, right? But then one of the limitations that she said that there were too many unknown words. I think she shouldn't have made this mistake. And I don't think this should be considered as the limitation. Limitation is something that you really cannot overcome, okay? But what about the chosen material? There are so many of them, and that's your expertise, and that's the major purpose, right? You keep saying use commercial offshore material, right? But then you said that you didn't choose an appropriate one. You didn't do your job as a researcher or as a teacher for that remedial program. That was it. I wouldn't consider that limitation. That's the weakness of your study. You should have avoided this weakness. Yeah, huge weakness. Huge weakness. You shouldn't have made this kind of mistake, I would say. It's not weakness, it's not limitation, it's a mistake, right? Particularly, I think, for this kind of research, and for example, it's action research, usually if I were the advisor, I will ask you to conduct a pilot study. For example, free, right? Volunteer. I might choose one, it's pretty much the same level. And then I will ask the student I kind of observe the student to see how he can really interact with the material I chose. And then I ask him what kind of questions he had when he interacted with this material. Then I can predict, too many unknown words for this group of remedial students. Then I shouldn't have chosen this one. I should have changed to another level of material. Okay, huge mistake. Now, let's come back. So, next time again, all right? So, next time when you have the chance to read the thesis, besides all the elements, go take a look at the limitations and see if the limitations are limitations. What could have done? So, you guys, as future researchers who are conducting research for your thesis, you have to ask yourself, is this a limitation, something you really can't avoid? Or you could have, all right, have thought about it and avoided the situation with the weakness. Okay, one big point. Second one, I do have to say, I can see some of you have very clear concept of theoretical framework and conceptual framework. Let me state it again, all right? Theoretical framework is all the relevant theories and research about the topic that you are going to study. While conceptual framework is what you want to do based on the result of your review on the theoretical framework. Did I make myself clear? Yeah. Dima, after my explanation, is that clear for you now? Because you're gonna encounter this for your final project. I'm gonna ask the same thing. Okay, so when we say relevant research, theories and research. What does it mean? And this is also something for everybody, right? And I like your critique saying that usually what we need to provide in literature review is relevant research. And definitely before we provide relevant research, we have to provide theories. And usually, I think for master's level, theories means that at least you need to provide definition. Okay? And then you need to, when we say definition, definitely you need to say, what is it? Okay, why is it? How is it? By theories. Okay? So if you say remedial program, you have to define what is it? And why we have this remedial program and how remedial program consists of. Okay? Then that's theories part. What about research? Research means that you have to review. Even we have the theories, but that's not enough. We have to review relevant research conducted to learn more about this particular topic. That's research is about. And I like what these two groups all point out. Like the shortage of literature review. Okay, and this is also the message for you all. Frank, I have to say that you are a very critical reviewer. Very, very critical. How many, how many studies that should be included? How many? That's also a critical question for you all. And I know if you, for example, that student, even she only have like 35 pages, but she has included all the top tier and critical journals. Okay, and how do we know? You, an advisor, should know, because she's supposed to be the expert in that particular topic that you are studying about. So she or he will let you know that if you have enough research topics, okay? But definitely one of the criteria Frank raised is how recent. And it's good that he noticed only like 7 of them is of recent years, okay? Then that could be an issue, okay, for your study. So always keep that in mind. How many and whether you have included the most critical one, that part you have to go check with your advisor. But one of the criteria is the recent studies. If you look at all your studies and they are all more than 5 years ago, then you have to think about how you are going to discuss your findings, because you are not going to have further conversation with the recent scholarship. It's going to be out of date. When it is out of date, what is your contribution of the study? You are contributing something that people wouldn't be interested in because it's kind of old. Okay? All right. So that's for literature review. Okay? And I like how this study, this group gives an overview of the study. Okay, so that we get an idea about what the study is about. Read this. Okay, and theoretical literature review. Now let me move to the methodology part. Yes, I think the participants, I think this group does point out we need to include more, okay, about the characteristics or the attributes of the participant. Here comes the key question. It's always to say it's not enough. It's not enough, but, okay, what should be included? The question for us as a reviewer is that you say that it's not enough. Tell me, what should be included? So what should be included? And this is also a question for you all, okay? Particularly if you look at her, let's take a look at this. Because when the first group raised the question, oh, more characteristics needs to be included, then I take a look at the appendix. Look at the appendix. Because for all of you in the appendix, you will definitely need to know what should be asked for general information. So general information is an area for you to gather more characteristics or attributes of your participants. All right? But the question is, what should we ask? For example, how many boyfriends do you have? For example, definitely you wouldn't ask this, right? For example, you are not going to ask questions that are not related to the research topic. Okay. Then the next question is, what are related questions that you definitely need to ask? Okay. So for this, so as a researcher, you have to think about, if I really want to know how the research question is about how they interacted with the visual novels, I think one of the questions that I would like to ask is, what about their previous experience with visual novels? Did you have experience interacting or playing with visual novels? Yes or no? If yes, please give me an example. Something. Because with or without would impact on how they interact with the visual novels, right? So that's how you design the questions. One of the questions I have is about their language proficiency. Okay, you might want to provide, for example, their monthly test 月考. So what about if listening and speaking is part of some essential competence required for them to interact with this material? So you need to provide these information. So they have a very concrete idea, roughly their abilities, their speaking and listening abilities. And that's why they are in this remedial program. Do you understand? Otherwise, I think readers from other contexts, they have no idea when they say, oh, they are in a remedial program. So what about their proficiency? You have to give them some idea, okay? Secondly, I think, let me imagine this. Remedial program hosted or prepared by, let's say, one of the schools in Da'an district versus a remedial program prepared or hosted by one of the schools in Ruifang. Ruifang, you know, like Taipei, new Taipei city, right? Quite off, a bit remote. Would that be the same? The resources, the materials, the content? Definitely not, right? So when you say the participants and the context, you have to provide the context of this school, because that will also give your reader some sense of what kind of students that they might have, what kind of equipment they might be provided. All this plays a role for your research, and that's why you need to provide. Okay, so all these are weaknesses, right, for this part. Okay. And research methodology for that part, like what you have mentioned, the research questions, interview questions, okay, should be designed based on some framework. Okay, if you say, for example, let's see. I think this is, for example, I would say a critique on this. This one is bilingual, right? But then suddenly, monolingual, right? And who will understand this for those who don't read Mandarin? No way to understand. So this is a obvious weakness, okay, and inconsistent. What about this one here? Who can understand this? Okay, for those who don't read Mandarin Chinese. Okay. All right. See, at least she said that, oh, this questionnaire is based on this, okay, is adapted. But when you say it's adapted, you need to, adapted means what? You make some modifications. So how do you make modifications? Based on what? Okay, so this part, for your thesis, when you say it's adapted, how? Adapted, what kind of modifications you have made and why? Okay, you have to give explanations on this. Okay, this part is at least is good, right? It's bilingual. Okay. But for this part, for example, for this part, did she say that, okay, the above are based on 1 to 10 is based on this, right? What about others, 11 to 16? What happened to 11 to 16? And what about this part, okay? Okay, this is based, once again, is, okay.
11 to 10.
What happened?
I think it should be 11 to 16, but I say 11 to 10.
Okay. So that's another reminder. If you rush to graduate, and then if somebody reads your thesis, this is what happened. I told you, right? I feel I double check 25 times on every single page, but then when I come back, I still see some mistakes. Okay. So then, when you rush to graduate, then definitely you need to hide your thesis. Some of them, their thesis is that they did not give any authorization to be read. Right now, this cannot be done. Every single thesis has to be in public. Right now. Okay. Because some students thought that they would just hide it. Nobody will read it. It's in a not very good quality. But now it's no, you cannot choose not to be read by others. Okay. All right. What else? Let's move on. This is about research methodology. So for this, the purpose for me to ask you to review is I want you to be hush reviewers for others first, but then you need to be hush reviewers for your own work later, okay, for your final project. So everything that we have talked about now, saying that they are weaknesses, then don't let me see them, right, in your final paper. Okay, so when you say that, oh, these research questions just randomly here without explaining why they are here and how they were developed in this way. Okay, so for your final project, I also want to see how did you develop your interview questions? Based on what? Okay, all right. Last part is, I think today, both of the groups did a very good job on the trustworthiness of the study, okay? And I hope the criteria was also for you all when you conduct your own. All right, I think it's pretty much, okay? So, do you need to take a break? What about we take a break and then come back at 11? All right, and then we're gonna move on to our next two groups. Okay.
我猜吧，而且主要在户外，我实在无法想象他要他就想要拍一个那个牛顿的读书会，冰会掉下来。因为这就是简单做就好，就是你的 outline 去做成 PPT。
然后再把
你要切对，然后让他们切，不然然后这个是这边有16，对，可是我们10点没有，对，还好你有问，然后我跟你讲，我写了一下，我在想其实我一直在挣扎，到底要给他多少钱？因为suppose 如果我给他的钱，他应该要跟我讲一下他的 research 是什么。可是偏偏我就没有时间来跟他讲，然后他也没有办法一边讲他就要去机场，然后我就在挣扎，想说，然后又觉得给这个钱真的太少。你们应该是要不然就是他来的时候，我们的这个要本来就是这个。
Go to Blake and She.
没有，因为这个咨询费，其实就等于是开始给他聊天，然后所以这个也是
I don't know that. I think we saw the fitness track, and you're trying hard to tell NG that. Never mind. So he's anxious. He is the last part. He's anxious about you don't need Never mind.
之前
You're
来之前的越来越危险了，就是他在我这里，
但我在想要不要对照，就是
他的饮料，
因为有2题有分到
还有他在演讲的时候，他没有
昨天就很难做。
你这些东西有没有回家？还是说你一定要有？
所以你知道我他就到
时候我就
但是人家
我第3反正就类似于这个，所有的那些就是我要自己
因为我们这样我
因为我的主持人要不要？
对，我怕有人
好啊，可以啊，可以。最重要的要给我帮我包装然后Kevin，因为每次都有投了运到拿给谁多少钱？哦 ，it's pretty much good。
3 minutes。
All right.
really?
Oh, really? Yeah. So we actually like having
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Andy, and this is Jennifer and Levi. Today we're going to critique on the study of implementing text-based language teaching to promote English-speaking performance of sixth graders in elementary school in Miami County, an action research approach. Next page. So this is the overall outline. First, I'll be giving a general introduction of the study. Then Levi will provide the strengths and weaknesses. Lastly, Jennifer will discuss the contribution to the field and potential improvements. So the introduction. The main purpose of the study is to know how task design promotes low-achieving students' speaking ability, while also identifying the problem within the task conduction and to see how the teacher reacts to those problems. And the research used an actual research approach that involves the teacher-researcher to plan the action, like the curriculum or the activities, and actually use them in class, then observe and reflect to the results of students' learning progress. The research was set at Antonio Indigenous Elementary School, and there were 5 participants in total. They were all 6th graders and with not so good English competence, and they were all voluntarily to become participants. The research was based on 2 cycles, which is the cycle blend, and each of the cycle lasted around 8 to 9 weeks. And this table shows that what data collection method was used each week. So there were 5 methods used in total. The first one is recording, is for observing interaction, development of students' learning process. And the second one is field notes, is for teacher to handwrite their observation during class. Then the student reading reflection and interview were both conducted towards the end of each cycle, and it's for understanding like what students have learned and what's their opinions for the task. Last one is the teaching logs. It's for teacher to identify like what problems occur in class and to self-examine their teaching skills. As for data analysis, it can be divided into 2 parts. The first one is text performance. So each student's text performance was examined by the researcher and an narrator to make it interpreted reliable. And they will count every mistake, every pause, every silence within the text performance and give it a score in order to see like the overall development or improvement of each student throughout the semester. Then the researcher will also transcribe and code every other data and categorize them into themes to better interpret and clarify students' learning progress and opinions. Lastly, there were two main findings. The first one is these kind of task-based language teaching designs do help promote low-achieving learners' speaking skills, and these learners actually have positive perception towards the task designs. And we'll have Levi to discuss the strength and weakness.
Hello everyone, my name is Levi. I will present to you the next part, which is strengths and weaknesses of this research. So the first one is literature review. The first strength is this research can have the integration of prior research, which means the research can reference previous studies on text-based language teachings and speaking acquisition from the student. And the next part is, so it's give the solid theoretical foundation for the whole research. But the weakness of this part is lack of comprehensive analysis or synthesis of existing literatures, which means the studies doesn't delve into the key findings, research gap, or the debate. Move to the next part, which is research design. The first key point is use qualitative data, which means this research can incorporate semi-structured interview, student reflection from the reflection sheet. So it's give a rich insight into student thought and their attitude toward the speaking test. The next point is, so it can also include student perspective through the student reflection. So it will give comprehensive understanding about the speaking test. But this part also have the weakness. The first is lack of control group, means this study doesn't mention about the control group or have the comparison between the task-based language teachings and other teaching methods. The second is this study heavily relies on qualitative data. So it like quantitative data and statistical analysis to support the key findings. The third point is like clarity in methodology. I have to mention that this point, the research do mention about methodology used in the research. However, it's failed to show that the teacher guidance before student do the action sequences. And the last point is time constraints. The author have to admit that in the limitation that this research should have been done in a longer time frame periods, not just in 17 periods. In the result and conclusion, the first key point is this research can acknowledge the evidence, the progress, like it can conclude student progression through supported by observation and student reflection sheet. The next part is reflection and professional growth. This key point the author has been mentioned in the abstract as one of the main point is acknowledged for the future research. The third is it can use specific example like to illustrate for the result and finding. So through student fluency and accuracy, student progression in fluency and accuracy. The fourth and the third is identification of limitation, like it's identify the limitation, and the last part is can suggest for the future research to suggest for the future research for like is move on to the weakness. The first point is like discussion of potential confounding factor that may have the influence on the result, such as student prior language proficiency and their motivational level before. The next is focus on two dimensions of speaking, which means this is also having stayed in the limitation. That means such as the author I'm sorry. Okay, so the next part, Jennifer will present.
Levi was talking about focus on only two-dimensional speaking competence, which also means that in this study, the researcher has made the students like have a conversation with each other, like two people having a conversation. So they could have used three-dimensional speaking, like three kids, like the students, or four in a group, and they could have focused on the speaking competition in other dimensions as well. And now we go ahead with trustworthiness. When it comes to trustworthiness, we feel that this research has a credible data collection and which ensures the comprehension, understanding of the subject matter. It has inter-rater reliability, and which means that the researcher has has someone, a rater. He has shown all the questions and the observation to someone, okay, with regards to how it is going to be proceeded. And we can also talk about the usefulness of this study. It can be used further on for research purposes. And when it comes to consent forms, we know from the appendix that the consent forms were signed from the parents of the students participating in the study. And we talk about weakness here. Uncertain prolonged engagement of the researcher. We do not clearly know if the researcher was there in all the lectures, all the class, and he himself observed the students who were there in the class. And there is a lack of member check. The students knew what they are doing, like the participants wrote everything in the reflection, but they weren't aware of the progress of the study, like what is happening and like what are the observations that the researcher is going to do. And we are uncertain if there is a critical friend, like after finishing the research, if the researcher has mentioned all these things to someone and checked if like these things are correct, or is there any modifications that can be made here. And now we talk about contribution to the field, providing insights into the practical application and effectiveness of TVLT. And it offers valuable data to educators and researchers for future, like teachers can use this approach for students who can increase the English language ability. And as it also says, paving way for future research, like there are limitations to this this research. So in future, if someone is going to do a research, so they can like fill the gap between the things that it is found in this research. The potential improvement for it is that we could expand the sample size. Like there were only 5 students used here, we could go ahead with a number of students here, and the duration, which was 17 weeks. So we can take as a longer period of time so that we know if this task base is useful for a long-term implications. And as this is totally a qualitative research, they could have also included quantitative measures, so which could have shown like the pre-test and post-test to know if there has been an increase in the proficiency level through the systematic numbers mainly, and expand scope of speaking competence. Like this study mainly focuses on accuracy and fluency. So we could expand focus and also go ahead with grammar or any other things which is related to the speaking, and replicate the study in different contexts. As this is for the 6th graders, we could also like go ahead with 4th graders or 8th graders in this context. And that's all.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. Now, 3 minutes for group 1 and 2 to generate a question for group 3.
just 3,000 people. So it is not easy. Yeah, a part of it. And students you mentioned about this is in renovation, so too many parts. This is yeah. Yeah, we can aim for the summer break. And this is all. It is not mentioned. It only mentioned about times off. We're not focusing on only the times we talk about the summer. Yeah.
So like to go fat as
I would personally love to say so that's yeah, it's over and then so we can talk but how about the framework and then someone's going to have so you said you want to stand here.
All right, now let's welcome question from group 1 to the presentation group.
A question from for Leva. Why do you think we should include the qualitative data in this qualitative research? It seems that you are a qualitative professor judging our work. We are doing the work in this course and you are judging us. Why don't you put numbers in this? I agree that based on Jennifer, she said that we need to provide some numbers to justify all the improvement of the language proficiency. But that is kind of necessary, but we don't always say a research should include both control group or data from the numbers data. That's the first question. And another one is that whether the critical friends can be detailed to write down in our research. If we ask a lot of professors in our department or from the peers or even from our advisor, why do we need to write it down in our thesis? Nobody really mentioned they have critical friends. So I don't think that's a weakness.
Right, okay, so who in your group would like to address Frank's questions?
Thank you very much for the questions. I will, on behalf of my group, I will answer to you. Your first question, that is why do we need to incorporate the quantitative data in this? Because to our group of thinking, we think that there's the mixed method can give more support for the can give the concrete support for the whole interview for the key findings and the result So the number will make it more clear for the reader comprehension, as well as give more illustration to give the support for the research. Jennifer will.
As Frank asked that it is not important to write something about the critical friend, so then I would ask the same question. Then why is it mentioned in the PPT which Professor has said like that? It is one of the factors where it mentions critical friend. So we do not actually know if they have used a critical friend or not, but there could be some point in the abstract or somewhere that they could have mentioned that there was someone like the professor or anyone who was there to help them with the methodology, or someone who has like may help them with all those things. Like as I previously said in one of the class that when I went to the this conference, so there were people who were telling and helping other researchers. So I was wondering if there was someone who has helped the researcher here. So that is not mentioned, so I needed to say that.
Okay, thank you. Or I'll address this later too. Okay, thank you for the questions and for the presentation. All right, now one more. Okay, one question from this group.
So the potential improvement, the page, we mentioned that we have to expand the sample size. But as Gloria asked, how much do you think is enough, and why? How much should they expand? And that's the adequate size for this study.
I think they're like, because we're not researchers, we don't have got to say like what we think would be the appropriate sample size. But what we address this here is like, because the study only have like 5 participants, and it's definitely a limitation because first it's only 5, so you only got like 5 data to analyze. And we're not so sure like what is sufficient, but like it would definitely be better, and we will have like a richer resources to put into research if we have more participants.
Okay, so my next question for you is definitely 5 is not enough, so how many more, right? It's always okay, I'll address this issue. Okay, good question, and thank you for the response. Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. I really like this group because you can see, like last week I said that it's not only about distribute the work, but you can see lots of collaboration from their presentation.
Okay, hi everyone. I think this should be more in a cozy atmosphere. So welcome to our presentation. We are very glad to present the PANS thesis, and later on we're going to review and critique on some of the parts, and some of the information were included in the previous presentation, which we appreciated a lot. And now I would love to talk about the table of contents. Later on, we're going to do the overview first, and then I'm going to do theoretical framework and conceptual framework, as well as literature review.
And then Riz will help us to get to know more about methodology. And for Angela's part, she will talk about trustworthiness. And in the end, for a conclusion of suggestions, Huing will do that. Okay. So now Huing will give us an overview.
Okay, so now let's take a look at the overview of this study. So the purpose of this study is to enhance low achieving students' key performances in two aspects of the accuracy and the fluency in 17 weeks, and it applied a approach named task-based language teaching into research cycles. And this kind of qualitative research have some kind of like some data collection methods, including audio-video recording, classroom observations, teacher logs, student interviews, and reflections. Next would be study partners.
Okay, so then we're going to talk about the frameworks next. Thank you. So as I mentioned, the theoretical framework should be highly related to the existing theories. And in this study, there are two very clear main theories that are mentioned. The first one is EFL learner speaking acquisition, and the second one is TBLT, which stands for task-based language teaching. So these two were actually, the main concept is written in the literature review, which I will further discuss later. Okay. And as for the research gap, researchers would find gaps within the existing theories. So the gap that she found is that to discover TBLT incorporating with teaching speaking for low-achieving learners in educational priority areas, which is EPAS, which launched by the Ministry of Education in Taiwan. Okay, so this is the research gap. And then we should talk a bit more about the conceptual framework, which after the gap has been discussed, research questions then come out. So there are three research questions mentioned in this study. And I'm not sure if you can find out some of the factors within the research questions. So I'm going to give you a little, no, not a test, a discussion about, can anyone tell me what are the factors that you can see in this research questions? Or let's say it's a variables in quantitative research methodology. Is there any factors?
Can you define the factors?
Okay, sure. So factors, which means the very important element which will be discussed in the whole study. So let's say the first one should be task design, because it talks about task design in each of the research questions. And then it also talks and aiming for its participants in low-achieving learners, which is also shown in the research questions. The third one would be their speaking performances, which the author defined it into speaking fluency, speaking accuracy. So these three factors, which then transfer into this kind of, I would say, a visual illustration, which I believe it is much more easier for the two groups who didn't read through this study. You can simply say that the researcher are going to see the cause and effect relationship between low-achieving EFL learners with their speaking performances and with the variables of giving them task designs. So these were actually, in my own reading experience, I read through it more than 5 times, and then I come up with this kind of concept. Yeah, and next. Okay, so we will talk more about literature review. So as I mentioned in the theoretical frameworks, there are two main theories which is mentioned in the literature review. The first one is the acquisition of speaking. And there are some scholars who have been talking about this theories. I'm not going to read through it because later on I'll focus more on the critiques. Okay. And the second one is TBLT, which is task-based language teaching. It is basically an evolution of cumulative language teaching, which is very useful in our classrooms. So it should also mention about task design, which is highly related to the methodology later.
Riz will going to present. So here comes the critiques. I would say the strengths for the frameworks is that the researcher did use the existing theory as a base for interpreting the results. And also, the research gap is revealed precisely, I would say. But there should be, in my opinion, the conceptual framework is often presented in a visual format or illustrates cause and effect relationship, which this study did not show. That's why I provided myself with the cause and effect relationship to you, which I believe it would be much easier for readers to understand the whole study. Okay. And for literature review, the definitions, which is mentioned earlier, and the aspects were described clearly, I would say, but I found the same kind of weakness within even the other thesis that is presented. There's no more additional information included. It seems so limited, it seems so narrowed down, which I would personally think a bit fragile for viewing above all the theories that you're going to use and as a foundation of your study. Okay. So that is the critiques of my part, and let's move on to methodology.
For methodology, we can see that all students in Mali, which means they have low academic pressure from their parents, and they were 5th grader when they start this project. And they're all voluntary to join this study, and they have learned English for 2 years. And here's our analysis interview question. As we mentioned, they only have the monolingual content in this study. So it mainly focuses on why do you think you have to learn English, or what kind of method do you want a teacher to help you to learn English speaking. And based on the answer of the analysis questions, they develop their curriculum, including like finish a to-buy list in the supermarket. And after the activity, that students have to answer interview questions. And did you like any difference between the English class you had before and the English you have right now? So some kind of perspective from the students. And they use this perspective to revise their curriculum. Then we enter the second cycle, which means the second semester. Pretty much the interview questions after the second cycle, but the difference is they compare this semester and the last semester, and also ask their what kind of topic or task you would suggest them to imply in the future. And here's the data collecting. So all the course and the interview are audio and video recorded, and the video is the interview is about 15 minutes. And students have to fill the reflection sheet and teacher for the teaching log after every course. And here I want to go this part first. This methodology addressed to a research question. So for the first two, it's the speaking fluency and accuracy. So I think the pause and silence breaker in the interview refers to the speaking fluency, and the mistake made refers to the speaking accuracy for the first two questions. And the last one, the third question, how do the low achieving learner perceive the text design in the 2 cycles? So they gather interview data, and then process to revise their curriculum. So I think these 3 research questions was properly addressed. And for the data analysis, they also transcribe and categorize the interview contents will be used to address a research question. Also, they invite another writer to reach the inter-writer reliability. But they only send the audio data to another writer, and that's one of my main critique about its weakness. So are 2 examiners enough to reach inter-writer reliability? We also say like we have to triangulate our research, but they only have 2. And also, they only send the audio data to a researcher. So if you record both audio and video, why don't you send both of them to another writer? Another weakness is insufficient sample size. And for me, I think normally we have around 20 to 30 students in the same class. So like a professor just said, if we are in a Hualien or in a Taitung, so those low achieving students will be much bigger portion of a class. So maybe 10 or 15 is much needed. And the strength is the connection and causation between 2 cycles are strong because they use the data to revise. And data collection and analysis address the research question well. Okay, then that's the trustworthiness part.
Okay, and thank you, Riggs. And now I'll talk about trustworthiness in this paper. And based on the guideline, I divided into 2 questions. And the first one is which aspect of trustworthiness were practiced? And the second question is which aspect of trustworthiness were not practiced? And now let's move on to credibility. And as for the triangulation, as Reese mentioned, there are 5 sets of instruments to gather data. These include audio recording, video recording, teacher's field note, student reflection, 2 semi-structured interviews, and teaching log. And as for the personal perspectives, we can not only gain the opinions from the students' interview and also their reflections. We can also see some dialogue between participant and also participant and teacher. So we can know more about the students' perspectives. And the next one I'm going to talk about is the rigor part. And if you see the appendix C, the author can provide a concept form for us, although it writes in Chinese. And yes, and the second one is during the interview, the author indeed told the participant that the purpose of this course, that is, we try to help them to improve their speaking fluency and accuracy. And as for the usefulness part, I list 2, one that is research process and research outcome. The first one is, if you saw the result part, you can see that the researcher modified the text quickly in order to help students to achieve their speaking performance. For example, in cycle 1, the author found that students were not familiar with numbers. As a result, this author provided different kinds of activities in order to help students to familiar with numbers. And the second one is in page 69, the researcher provided 4 to 5 subtractions. And this helps the further researchers to do the same method in the future. And next, I want to talk about the ethical practice. And you cannot see any participants' personal information in this paper. Instead, the author used code and number try to identify each participant. And as for the cultural differences, all of the participants were Taya indigenous people. So I think it shows a symbol of cultural differences. And now I want to talk about the most important part, that is which trustworthiness were not practiced well. The first one is the size of critical friends, because it only it didn't mention more about this, so I think it lack of this. And the second one is the participant validation. Maybe the author did this, but she didn't mention whether she gave the outcome back to the students to check. And as for the research context, we think maybe the author can bring these participants to the real market or real restaurants to order food, instead of just ask students to do some in-class activities. And now let's move on to the suggestion which is presented by Hui.
Thank you, Angela. So next, move on to the last part suggestions. So next, there are 3 main witnesses and their suggestions that I would like to point out. The very first thing that I would like to talk about is participants. So there were only 5 fifth graders taking part in that kind of research, and that led to the situation that the vision in inadequate sample size, and not let alone the unbalanced group division. I mean, the teacher just divided these 5 students into 2 groups, one with 3 students and the other with only 2. It's not balanced at all, and it would be better to divide it into an even number. Should be 10 students, I guess. One with 5 and the other with 5. Yeah, it should be better. And next, the next limitation would be time. So the first thing I would like to talk about is time allocation. So this kind of research was carried out in intermittent periods of time. I mean, it was not continuous. I mean, the first cycle took place in the spring semester, and the second one took place in the fall semester. So the question is, what happened to students? in their summer break. So whether they upgrade to another higher level of speaking proficiency in their summer break, and whether they have tendency to forget some kind of like the patterns or the knowledge that the teacher taught them in the first cycle when they came to the second cycle in the research. So, and our suggestion is that she should conduct a continuous study to attain the consistency of the results. And the second one is time duration. So this kind of research was conducted in only 17 weeks. So it was not long enough. Especially it was not long enough to include the speaking complexity dimension, which is considered to be another important speaking performance in student. For example, what if the student ran into some kind of unexpected situation when they would like to order something in the supermarket, but they would like to ask about the information about the expiration of the items that they would like to buy. So what's the case? I mean, the teacher in the whole process, the teacher just provided students with some kind of basic items and basic patterns, basic vocabulary to practice with. It's not something like sophisticated or advanced vocabulary for them to practice in some kind of unexpected situations. So what in that case, what should they say in that situations? So I think it would be expand that's kind of the length of the research up to maybe more than 17 weeks. It could be 24 weeks, I suggest. And the next one, I would like to mention about the inter-rater reliability. So there was only one rater helping the researcher to analyze the audio recording. So our team suggested that there should be more rater included in that kind of research to examine multiple tasks. For example, like the video recording, interviews and reflection sheets, student reflection sheets. Yeah, that would be the end of our presentation. So thank you for listening.
All right, thank you very much. So now, group 1 and 2, you have 3 minutes to discuss a question for the 4.
It's something that is really difficult to achieve. But I don't know, should I critique it or not? Because when my side is that I also encounter similar questions. But actually, I don't know. It's really harsh to critique because I know why you encounter this kind of critique. Okay. So maybe it can be the example to revise my purpose.
So right now, you have to sometimes you are a reviewer, and we also know one day our curriculum we are running to become a researcher, so we have to go right now. But inside out, outside.
When I read through the whole research, so it seems to be that whenever I ask things it's hard for me to understand. People say it's like from
check the effect of all the intervention. It's basically task-based intervention. Yeah, hello. Okay. Group over there, go for it. A quick question for them. Hopefully not too difficult. Okay. So, there are several questions. Not so many, but one. Pick one. Yeah. Difficult one. So, first, for the community of practice, like Frank have said, it's not very essential to be presented. I mean, we don't know whether the researcher had the critical brain for cognitive practice or not. Therefore, it's be ambiguous to critique in this part. And then for have you guys mentioned the personal perspective and sense of humility in your study? Because I couldn't mention what personal perspective and sense of humility of the researcher. Yes. Okay. And then in the last part, Louis said that there should be more. Can you go to the last? And Elsa, one critical question. Critical question. Now you have three. Then the first three only for make sure, and they were clear. And this is the very true critical question. Can you go to the last part? When we explain the timeline. Here. So you guys say that should extend the research duration beyond 70 weeks. What is the precise time the researcher should extend the research duration? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Response?
In order to answer the question from the outside, so how long could it take in order to make sure that it would be better for the research? So I think it depends on the researcher, because in the research design, because in order to add more, an important criterion, which is speaking complexity, and as I said before, she should extend the length of the research up to the point that she should consider to be better for her to balance three kind of like criteria. The first one, fluency. The second one, accuracy, and the third one, speaking complexity. Three of them in the whole study. Yeah.
So how many?
It depends on the researcher.
Depends.
Yeah, depends on the design, research design.
Okay, stay here, all right? Because I also want to address this. All right? Question here.
Since you told me to sociality, it's like easier now. Let's make it like harder. So I have one reminder for if you want a longer period, well, how come we don't have the summer break? It's not practical in Taiwan system. If you're a teacher want to do this study in a class, that might not be a continuous study. You cannot ask students to come here in summer break. That's the reminder part. And we want to know the standard for choosing the size of samples. If you say 500 is not enough, how come you can judge how many, maybe 10 or something, to do the case study for speech?
The first point that you want to ask, like the sample time. So why don't we have the summer break in between? I think it should be better for the researcher to make it continuous, because in the summer break the student we are not so sure that what happened to the students in that summer break. So they have the long period of time to get off, and when they come back to the second cycle, so whether they forgot some kind of like the knowledge or the content, some kind of like the patterns or the items that the teacher taught them in the first cycle, and that made the physical really hard, very hard for her to revise the knowledge again. And whether in the summer break the student could get some kind of course the English course to tackling, and whether they could up level the level up to another speaking proficiency or not. We could not so sure about it. We could not be so sure about it. So I think she should make it continuous in order to make it consistent. But the whole period of time, the whole study should continue.
All the classmates come.
Sorry, she should advise she could advise students in some summer break to the class to make it continuous. Yeah, but in this kind of research, so like she make it in the first cycle, or in the summer break, and then advise the student in the second cycle. So it's not continuous at all. Yeah. Right.
I would like to add something else. So I would say a more ideal situation would be, why don't you start your first cycle from the fall semester? The winter break is much shorter than the summer break. There's only 3 weeks for winter break, and there's no great upgrades for 6th graders to become a junior 7th grader. Yeah, so we are not sure why the researcher choose this time zone rather than started from a fall semester following with the spring semester. This is what I would love to.
I think the first question was about the contradictory. You wanted longer, but...
That's right. In the reality part, we know eventually they will have breaks. Yeah, so this is, I should say this is the question that we are not able to answer. Though we provided it as a suggestion.
Okay, all right, okay. Very difficult questions, right? Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you. Okay, let me address some of the issues raised by the two groups. And I think these are the questions for you all too, okay? One of the question is, let's see, okay. Let me address another questions from 3. So you all talked about a critical friend, right? I think friend, this term might be misleading, okay? It doesn't have to be your friend, okay? Or somehow kind of friend. I think, but the point is about critical. What does it mean critical? For example, your advisor might be an expert in, for example, methodology. However, your advisor might not be the expert in task-based learning, or might not be an insider of this digital games material. So the critical friend could be someone who is very familiar with this kind of task-based design, okay, or this kind of speaking test. So let's see there's somebody from LTTC who happens to be your friend and who knows a lot about how to rate speaking fluency, speaking accuracy. Then this person could serve as a critical friend, critical reviewer, critical evaluator. Okay, and this person definitely knows more than your advisor. If your advisor is not an expert in assessment, your critical friend can serve this aspect, okay, can help examine or provide comments and feedback. Okay, so I just want to make this point clear. Critical reviewer, critical evaluator for your research, okay? So that's the first response. Second one, you all mentioned about how many raters, okay, how many raters. In reality, I think we need to consider this question from a practical aspect, as everybody has a super busy schedule. And it also takes a lot of time to review and to examine any kind of data. And I would say speaking is definitely the most challenging part. It's not like a grammar, right? True and false, correct or incorrect. It has a lot of elements. For example, in this study, accuracy, perhaps easier, but what about fluency? The pauses, the seconds, like all aspects to be examined. And this researcher said that
she invited, somebody, one person to help review all the data sets from, throughout the whole semester. I don't know who this lovely critical friend would be, or this expert could really help out reviewing all the audio and video data sets. Imagine how much time. If you really want to do a solid job, each video or audio has to review several times in order for you to give a very professional comment and feedback and rating. Okay, so ideally we would love to have more than 2. However, in reality, even in the professional community, think about how many community members you have for your oral defense or proposal hearing. At most 3. And for journal article reviews, even top tier, 2. Okay, and why 2? Sometimes we do have the 3rd one, because when they are very conflicting comments, then a 3rd one will be invited. Alright, so 2 is usually the normal practice. The point is about the qualification of that one that you are going to invite. You could invite 2 or 3, but they are not qualified. Then there's no use. However, if you could invite one who is very qualified and you give enough time for them to review, and they are willing to cooperate and help out. Usually, for example, for lots of my research, if I invite reviewers to do so much, to engage, and I need so much of their devotion to the review, they need to be paid, and well paid. Because it's just too much that I need them to devote to this review process. Too much. Okay? Alright, so what about, once again, the size of the participants? It's so easy. It's so easy to give a comment. Not enough participants. Okay, but the reality is, what is the reality here? The reality is that how many students are there in, how many students, you have to take this into consideration. How many students, and how many students who are volunteer and willing to participate in your study. These are the realities. These are also could be the limitations of your study. You probably happen to only have 5 or even fewer, 3 who are willing to participate. Okay? Yeah. Ideally, this research, this study, if I design this research, I would, ideally, I would like to have a whole class. And then I will identify some focal participants. The focal participants, okay, listen to the criteria for my selection. I will focus on, I will choose perhaps at least two students from the of high proficiency. I will choose at least 2 from the lower proficiency, and I will choose like 2, like average. And why? Because I'm trying to see how this task-based approach can really enhance students of various levels of proficiency. And I would design this research using mixed methods. Okay, mixed methods in terms of I would like to see overall how this task-based is going to influence the students. So I would give them speaking test. Okay, using, for example, for this level of students, I might use GEPT. So I'll give them a pre-test prior to my task. I'll give them a test again after my task. Try to see the accuracy and at least the full accuracy of their speaking. And now I will see the criteria here, speaking complexity dimension, right? So that goes to how long how long? I have two criteria for your reference. One is if we are conducting this as a classroom action research classroom. This is a classroom setting. This is a school setting. So usually a semester, how long? And yeah, like a roughly 17 weeks. So I don't think it's fair to say 17 weeks is not long enough. Hey, I have used the whole semester. How long do you expect me to do it? The reality, sometimes teachers have busy schedule. They have a lot to cover for the monthly tasks, for all the requirements. If I can do this throughout the whole semester, that's long enough. Okay, so that, think about in reality how many weeks that you can really conduct this research. That's one consideration. Secondly, I always ask the students, okay, if you say that you are considering their speaking complexity, then go to research and go find relevant study to see in terms of speaking complexity, how other researchers suggest the time is long enough for examining speaking complexity. If 17 weeks is not long enough, how many more weeks? Months? Okay, so usually you will say based on whose study, for example, 8 weeks is suggested, for example. You can cite somebody's research, okay, to argue certain period of time is enough. Otherwise, it's just endless debate and critique, saying, oh, that's just not long enough. It's so easy to say it's not long enough, but tell me, how many weeks longer? What is the criteria? The point is about what is the criteria? What does research say? Suggest how long is long enough. Okay, and also for qualitative research, you always encounter an issue of depth and breadth. If you want to have more, like you said that the more the better, do you think you can really get to know 30 students' learning experience? 30. The more is the better. Can you really get to know 30 students' learning experience? Ask yourself, is that feasible? Okay. Or you would rather identify and focus some, for example, 6. And then you need to provide why those 6. As long as you can provide solid rationale to say why I want to identify these 6, then you can justify. Okay? Because for those who said that I would like to observe, and my focal students are 30 of them, then then I will ask you, so how many researchers involved in this study? Only you? Then I will have a big question mark, because I don't think you can do it. But didn't you say the more the better? Who says so? It really depends how much time and work, how visible it is when you propose the number of your participants. So next time, please, do not judge the number of your participants. Simply say, oh, not enough. It's just so you simplified the rationale, the complexity of all the consideration. Because it's so easy for other people to say, oh, not enough. Tell me how many more. What is your rationale? Next time, when people make this argument, you need to ask them, so how many more? What is your rationale and argument? All right? And definitely these 2 questions are for you as researchers when you decide the number of the participants. Is that clear? Yeah? Okay. What other points I would like to make? All right. I think next week, are we going to talk about actual research or case study next week? Case study first, okay. action research, this is a type of research that is a bit different from so-called conventional research. In what ways? Action research, conventional research, usually we identify the research gap mainly, okay? Mainly, big part of it is from examining the existing literature review, okay? While action research, the research gap usually comes from the teachers themselves and mostly based on their teaching practice. For example, this study, what about the research gap here? The gap is the teachers, is that her, right? Herself feel that her students will not be able to carry out speaking or conversation fluently. So here comes the gap, because the gap for her teaching practice. But in order for her to conduct this action research, she started to look into literature to see how literature can help her shape her action in the classroom, her action research in the classroom. Usually, this type of classroom action research will involve 2 cycles, because the first cycle, she will try to conduct a study based on what has been informed by the literature. Literature will tell her, oh, this is what you should do. And she implemented the first cycle, and she gathered comments and feedback through the reflection, interview, observation. Then she decided and designed the second cycle to see, because based on the second cycle, supposedly the task will be much well theorized and designed. And hopefully your students will be able to improve more based on the second cycle. Okay, so that's the action research, and I'm glad that we have the chance to read through this study. Okay, now before you started reading our textbook. Okay, all right. I'm glad that we get started at 9:30 rather than 10. Otherwise, one of the groups will be postponed to next week. All right. This week, this Wednesday, classroom is 4:02 next time. And please be sure to show up on time, okay? Because the speaker will arrive at 11:30 already, and you too got the job to do, right? All right, to receive the speaker. All right.
So it's okay if we taken the building and the first chair class come after 12:10.
Oh, yeah, I think ours, the talk will start at 11:20, right? 11, huh? Oh, 12:20, sorry, 12:20, sorry, 12:20. So please come as soon as you finish your previous class, okay? Because the speaker will need to rush to the airport right after the talk, okay? All right, so I'll see you this Wednesday. Thank you very much. I'll see you.